Hello and welcome. This is Dr. Rasmussen, a continuation of the knowledge chapter, chapter 9. And in this talk, I'm going to describe some of the uh, pieces of research that investigators have looked into in respect to what do children know, in particular infants. Are they born with knowledge? How quickly does knowledge develop? When can individuals, these infants, be able to tell differences between various objects, as well as categories? When does that develop and how does that develop? All right, so basically, this is what I'm going to talk about. So, what do infants know about categories? And I do believe this is my final installment of the knowledge chapter. So, let's go. So basically, what do infants know about knowledge? So, can infants start forming rudimentary categories at an early age? Well, it looks like so. How do researchers test this, and what were the findings from these various experiments? So, like I just said, it does appear as though infants can form rudimentary categories. Does it look as though they come predisposed, born with this type of knowledge? Well, more than likely, no. The children need to, these infants need to experience the world to gain knowledge and to start to put together their categories. And if you're looking at it from a Piagetian, Dr. Jean Piaget, what he would say is they are creating their schemata. Schemata is a schema, plural, and schemata is the mental, model, an organization of how the world works and various categories. So they're building their schemata through assimilation, adding to the same category, accommodation, creating or changing categories, so on and so forth, to come to an equilibrium, equilibration, some may say it, but a point where their schema matches on to what is experienced in society. In the world. Okay, so let's get off of that and let's start talking about this. So one way that researchers actually measure children's ability, infants' ability, if they know the various objects and what their knowledge is about objects, is, well, you can't ask a child. Okay, excuse me. You can't ask an infant. You can't ask a 2-month-old, a 4-month-old. You possibly might not even be able to ask a 1-year-old. It's going to be very difficult. It's going to be maybe like one or two words, if that, in some children. So how do you do this? Well, the preference task. So what researchers do is they basically expose children. I keep saying children, but it's infants here. You can do children as well. And they measure the amount of time that an infant looks at an object. So basically what happens here is, let me go back. The preference task is infants oftentimes, and even you and I, we look longer at things that capture our attention. These things that capture our attention often are the things that we're interested in. So researchers believe this is happening the same way with infants, in that if they look longer at an object, then they can actually, tell the difference between two objects, and maybe even they like the object more. But either way, we can tell that these infants can tell the difference between these two objects because they're looking at one object more than the other, and typically they're going to look at the object that they like more than the other. It could be wrong. They might be looking at the ugly object, the object that they don't like, okay? So, oh man, maybe that's why kids look at me all the time. Oh, I thought it was the preference task. So anyhow, you get the point. It's basically children are at least able to look at something for longer because they can determine that it's different. Again, likely the preference. Okay, so basically Quinn and Johnson did a lot of this research, and we're going to look at the 2-month-old, then we're going to go older in ages. So the 2-month-old, they had 2-month-old infants, okay? So these are really young. 2 months, it's really, really young. So they had a familiarization task, okay, with living things. So they looked at these objects until they stopped looking at them, okay, familiarization. Then they view a preference task, okay? Then they're given a choice between, later on, right afterwards, to look at a living thing or a non-living thing. So they've gotten accustomed to the living things, but now, living thing versus non-living thing. What these researchers found is that, oh my goodness, I'm sorry about that. Sorry, it's the summer and it's been long nights doing a lot of work, cleaning my garage and staying up late, getting up early, which I kind of like, but sorry about those yawns. Hopefully you're not yawning as well. All right, let's get back to the show. So basically, the researchers, what they found is that these infants are going to look longer at the non-living thing than the living thing. So this is interesting. So if these infants cannot tell the difference between these two objects, these categories of these objects, the living thing versus the non-living thing, well then they look equally long at both the living object and the non-living object. But they can determine, or they look longer after they become familiarized with the living object. They're going to look longer at the non-living object, suggesting that they can tell the difference between those two objects. Otherwise, they would look the same at those objects. Now, looking at 3 to 4 month old Ferrer and Johnson, so Ferrer and Johnson, 2005, this is a little bit later than the other study. They did a familiarization task, and there's some of the stimuli on the right. Then they did a preference task. Yes, I did yawn again. uh, so basically the familiarization, they got familiarized with these various cats, okay, all different types of cats, and then they basically did the preference task again. And so the preference task looked like this: the cat and a dog. And so what's interesting is the 3 to 4 month olds here. I might have said 5 months earlier, maybe not them. The 3 to 4 month olds, these individuals, these little infants, they look longer at the dog than the cat. Again, very interesting. Suggesting that they can tell the difference between a dog and the cat. No, they're not. They're not dog infants, dog people. They are actually probably able to tell the difference between the category of a dog and a cat, and therefore they're looking longer at the dog because they didn't get familiarized with the dog. They got familiarized with the cat. So when you see another cat, it's like, okay, I'm bored with the cat. Show me something new. Whoa, what's that? Oh, that thing. I think I've seen one of those things before. Maybe not. That thing's way different than what I was looking at earlier. So maybe that's what's going on inside the infant's head, and that's kind of what these researchers are positing. Now, if you look at 6 to 7 months old, now again, view familiarization. So the familiarization task, two kitties, tabbies or something like that. I love cats, but I'm not good with names, primarily because I'm allergic to cats. So I really don't spend my time, or rather waste my time learning the cat's, type if I'm never going to be able to have a cat. Kind of just goes in one ear and out the other. I know that's a Siamese cat, though. That's 61%. Cute cats, though. So then they do the view the preference task. Okay, same as before. Now what's going to happen here is these individuals, the 6 to 7 month old infants, they're going to look longer at the Siamese, than a tabby cat. Okay, so this is kind of interesting. So why are they looking longer? Well, again, they're probably noticing that, hey, this object is different in possibly same category, cats, but this is a different type of cat. Now we're getting down to like that to like the species, or to the exact, I guess it would be the exact type of cat, the subcategory. All right, and so essentially more time has been spent by more participants in looking at the Siamese than the tabby. Sure. So this can basically demonstrate that these infants can represent specific category knowledge. All right. Whereas if you give a 3 to 4 month old the same task, they'll look the same at both cats. All right. They won't know the difference between that those are two different cats. Okay. And we believe that because the infants will look the same at those cats. All right. So just to go over this, it seems as though infants gain deeper knowledge about objects and the categories that an object belongs to as time goes on. And, researchers can do this in novel ways, in interesting, very innovative ways, as opposed to just trying to ask the individual, just see how much time an individual spends looking at an object. And it's the preference task. All right, thanks for tuning in. I think I'm going to go catch some Z's. Thanks, and have a good one.